Hello, marketing strategist. It's Dr. G. I hope all is going well for you today. You know, the one thing that we always have to remember about business, which is always kind of one of the most important yet difficult things we have to do, is manage resources. You can be the best marketer in the world, but unfortunately, when we look at business, we're always having to look at our marketing mix and decide what we can give and take, because there's only so much time and money and energy in the world that we live in. So sometimes we have to make trade-offs on resources. So that's what we're going to talk about today as it relates to marketing strategy, is that all of our resources are limited, and it's our job to make sure that we use them in the most effective way. So what do we mean by balancing resources? So we know we have this thing called the marketing mix. And you remember the marketing mix are all of those levers that you have to use to be able to create an effective strategy. And when you look at your marketing mix, whether it's what you do in terms of your product offerings, growing them, using the status quo, iterating on a particular offering. You can look at marketing strategy, your customer segments. You can also look at how you're going to promote your products and services, how you're going to distribute them. And the one thing that's important as well, other than just the marketing mix, is how do you really look at all the resources you have and use them most effectively? Well, there are some, knowing that these resources are limited, there's some things that we can look at. First, meaning we all know that the very most important thing about marketing is understanding your segment, who you're going to target, and what value you have to them. We call that STP marketing. So you could think about using your resources towards a particular segment. Those that may be great, those that you have that may not need as much attention. We can also look at managing our marketing mix or our resources in terms of where customers are in our AER strategy or the life cycle stages. Are we going to spend more money on acquiring new customers, or maybe looking at our resources in growing the customers we have today, getting them to buy more things from us, or simply looking at how do we retain customers over time. We also can look at our branding and our offering and relationships. So do we want to focus on what our brand image looks like externally, or maybe creating loyalty programs? So our customer equity and marketing mix elements related to brand, offering, and relationships are also a way you might need to think about maintaining or spending your resources. And finally, that sustainable competitive advantage. How are we going to make it through the long haul? Meaning we can focus on really short-term goals to help, make that quarter-end revenue objective. But what happens in terms of long-term sustainability? Are we going to look at maybe using resources differently in particular geographies, or invest in new products and services? Or even, what about our sales teams or our territories, our human resources? Where are we going to focus on placing the right people that we have working on our behalf, and how much we're going to spend on that? So think about the marketing mix and all of these decisions we have to make, because remember, you have one budget, and likely the budget's going to change maybe a week or two after you get somebody nodding their head and saying, yeah, go. So how are you going to take this mix and spend it in a great way? So there's a term in business called resource slack. Resource slack is the potential resources available to an organization. And the slack is what we have available to us now. It could be the number of people we have in our organization working on our initiatives. It could be resources in terms of cash that we have to spend now or forecasted throughout the year. Resources are those things available to us now. Is called the slack. That's the money we have to play with, the money that isn't tied up in things that are, related to a contract or something that we simply can't touch. These are the discretionary funds that we have to spend. So the things that we need to look at, as I mentioned before, is the slack or the amount of resources that we have available may change based on our customer needs. Maybe we have a certain set of customers that need the focus of our sales teams or our customer care teams right now. What about the life cycle or where we are in the life stage of that product? Do we need to put more of our resources in a growing product, or do we have to focus on those products that have been around a while that's really keeping the lights on and bringing in the cash? We need to look at our market landscape. What's happening in terms of competitors? Do we need to use some of our resources to advance a strategy where our competitors are maybe honing in on us? Or is there something in the competitive landscape that we want to take advantage of? And then finally, how effective are our marketing activities that we do? So we constantly need to look at the slack or those resources that are available to us today and make decisions based on them. But at the end of the day, our resources are constrained. Even if you have a good pool of money now, you never know what's going to happen. Think of the world we're living in now with the pandemic. We might have legal implications, economic or technological shifts, or a constant innovation landscape that helps us try to stay ahead of the curve. So although our resources are constrained, we always need to look at externally and internally those factors that may drive or may take up some of those resources that we are counting on. So what we have to remember is that the slack or those resources that we have available to us adjusts. They adjust all the time, and we need to be nimble, and we need to make sure that we're smart in allocating those funds across the landscape of our marketing mix. But what we need to understand is there isn't any perfect way of doing this, because there's always things in the universe that will impact our work. And so we need to make sure that as we're allocating resources, we have a pretty buttoned up, simple way without being sophisticated enough to be able to account for things that happen and change, but being able to be simple enough so that we can be believed and understood in what we're asking for. And there really is, the best method of doing this is to be nimble enough to be able to iterate our approach. Maybe quarter to quarter, or even week to week, or year to year, how we are going to be able to use those resources in a way where we're constantly getting good feedback to tell us whether or not we're on a successful path. So how do we go about doing this? There's some traditional methodologies that are called anchoring or adjustment heuristics that are widely used throughout business, throughout marketing. Now, if you remember from other videos I've done, heuristics is just a rule of thumb. Think of it as a shortcut, or maybe something that we've done in the past. So one way that this is often done in business is that when they're going to dole out the resources, sometimes they will use something called a percentage of sales methodology. And this is where you have a revenue target, and they say, we will give you 1% or 5% or 10% of the projected revenue for your marketing to get you there. So in that case, what we need to understand is that sometimes doing a percentage of sales methodology isn't going to get you to where you need to be, because you might have an opportunity that you might need more funds for, or maybe you're in a point in time where you want to hone back a little bit. So why spend money unnecessarily? So this is an old-fashioned way of financial people under saying, well, this is on average for your industry, the percentage of marketing budget based on sales. They could do the same thing and not look at the top line, but the profit method, which really calculates, okay, a percentage, whether it's 5% or 10% of your overall profit, is what you're going to get in terms of a marketing budget. A historical methodology, please don't use this, is that last year you got X dollar amount, so we'll give you X dollar amount this year. So it's looking at what's happened in the past and sort of leveling it out. Well, you got $1 million for marketing last year, we'll give you $1 million this year, maybe $1,010,000. But let's look at it this way. We should always look at our opportunities and what we believe we're going to achieve, and ask for the amount of money that and show them based on a marketing return on investment what you believe will happen. Don't stand for you got this much last year, you get this much this year. And so there's also things called competitive parity. Okay, so if you know your competitor got $1 million marketing budget, you could go to your boss and say, hey, well, they're spending $1 million. I should get $1 million. But really, that isn't a very strategic approach, because you want to start with your target audience and understand what your opportunity is and try to accomplish based on that marketing objective what that return will be. So be more strategic than these 4 simple methods that are used in the past. So how do you go about doing this? Well, the best way to get your money year over year and to reach your objective is to be able to measure. Proof is in the pudding. And I have a video on this called attribution model. So what we try to do in marketing is to be able to, for every dollar you spend, be able to determine what you brought in and what that mix of activities were. Is it a price increase that brought in X amount of dollars? Was it a particular promotion you spent? Maybe you did some social media versus some traditional public relations. How your goal, your job as a marketer is to be able to align every strategy you do to a dollar amount so that you can allocate those resources based on what's working and what's not working. Clearly, we want to maximize our profit, and we want to have a good return on investment. We know not everything is going to work because marketing is art and science, but we should test and learn. If we're going to fail fast, move on, try something else, but always make sure that what we do is we allocate our resources based on what's working best. So in terms of just having more of a blanket approach, we are going to attribute all of our successes to a particular tactic. So as I mentioned before, there's lots of different ways that budgets are doled out and resources are doled out. Classic is, you have a forecast of certain amount of revenue and sales, and your marketing budget is allocated based on driving in those funds. I mentioned before, the percent of sales methods. There's also industry benchmarks. So typically, let's say you're in consumer electronics and you're in a certain category, there will be industry benchmarks as to how much money you need to spend in order to have a return. There's what we call the last period reward and punishment. I tell you, this happens all too often. So you'll get to the end of the quarter and you haven't made your revenue objectives, or maybe the company, something has gone wrong. They've overspent, or there's something, an adjustment in the economy. And you might be rewarded or punished with your marketing budget based on some anomaly. So what you want to do is to convince your CEO or your finance people, those people who are giving you the budget, hey, you know what? Let's not look at how we did last period and be rewarded or punished on this. This is a long-term goal, and if you have good attribution modeling, and you should be able to understand what your key performance indicators are and what your goals are, make sure to stick to that. The squeaky wheel method. This is really fun. This happens in corporations all the time. You have the people with their pet project and they're like, yeah, I really need to make my end of the quarter sales goal. So instead of you spending money here on the growth products, let's spend it on the dogs here, the core products that we have. The squeaky wheel model is no good. You should always focus on what you believe you're going to be attain based on your forecast. Spread the butter model is everybody gets the same amount. You get 20%, you get 20%, you get 20%, and so on and so on. Spread the butter. Don't spread the butter. Make sure that you're out there and having a very good strategic marketing plan to be able to say, hey, this is our best opportunity. We're going to go after it. We're going to see that return on investment. And so here's what you need to really think about. And that is, if you can't measure it, you cannot manage it. The one most important thing you'll ever learn as a marketer is that many people think what we do is pictures and words and fluffy stuff. And we're not quantitative. Well, yes, we are quantitative. We own the customer, we drive the business. And so what we need to make sure, because we do own the customer, we drive the business, and we can turn the needle in the right way, you have to show proof is in the pudding. You need to account for every dime you bring in and every dime you spend. And you also have to look at other factors that are really important to the brand, such as our customer satisfaction. Are people happy with us? Are we delivering on the promises that we promised? Service quality. What is that overall experience with our products and services and the service that we deliver to our customer? Our brand. Is our brand in a slump? Do people know who we are? What is the quality and strength of our brand? Do that brand audit and make sure that we have a good pulse on our acquisition, our expansion, and our customer retention. And then finally, understanding the loyalty of our consumers and our brands. So these are just some common metrics. But as I mentioned, you absolutely have to be able to measure it in order to be believed. Or you're going to get the bread and butter, or you're going to get the punishment and reward system. So here's just a few types of metrics that we have. In Canvas, I have a list of probably 50 to 75 metrics that I promise I add to all the time that you will be asked to look at as a marketer, and you should know. Most importantly, we should understand our return on marketing investment at the highest terms, but we should also not ever forget about how happy are our customers. Every dollar you spend in promotion, you need to understand what that funnel is, meaning how many leads you've driven, how many conversions you've had from each lead, where they're coming from, the best channels for your particular segments, pricing. If you're do you have a price premium product, or are you a low-cost provider? What is your margin? What will happen if you raise your price or decrease your price or coupon the heck out of your product? Always understand that everything you do with price is going to have an immediate impact, positive or negative. Our sales force, how great if you have a customer, if you have a product where you're selling, whether it's online only, if you're using e-commerce, or if it's feet on the street or people within your brick and mortar. How well are these salespeople performing? And then finally, what is the return on each of your distribution channels? So this is a really short list of about 75 metrics that I have and that I use and that you can use, and it will give you your calculations as well. So what is the takeaway? The key takeaway is that there's only so much time and money. You're going to have to make trade-offs based on the resources that you have available to you. And always take a look at that marketing mix. Make sure that you have good key performance indicators and that you're measuring every dollar you spend and have a great pulse on those other intangible items such as customer service, customer satisfaction, how well your brand is doing, and overall marketing return on investment. So that's your takeaway for today. Trade-offs are never fun, but they're a very important part of marketing. So take care and have a wonderful day.